Genesis 12. Now the Lord had said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show thee. And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee. And in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed.
Daniel 9:27. And he shall enter into a strong and firm covenant with the many for 1 week. And in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and offering to cease. And upon the wing or pinnacle of abominations, one who makes desolate, until the full determined end is poured out. We got to pay attention. This is the time, this is the atmosphere. The Antichrist will rise. The Antichrist may be in our face now. Any covenant that's made at this time, we must pay attention. We must seek it out, and we must find out the details and see if it is 7 years. That is the key. Everything is centered around Israel. We can't worry about ourselves. We can't worry about America, which is not even in prophecy, unless we're Mystery Babylon, but that's another story. Pay attention.
Is issuing a stark warning to Israel that time is running out. The president says that if Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu doesn't sign a U.S.-backed peace agreement with the Palestinians, it could lead to some serious security questions down the road. The president's comments come as the two leaders are set to meet at the White House just over an hour from now, and as the United States finds itself embroiled in a tense diplomatic standoff with Russia.
The prospect of a two-state solution to the Middle East peace process may have grown dimmer today. Correspondent Doug McKelway on the unfortunate timing of a visit by one of America's strongest allies.
A vigorous handshake, warm greetings, and an expression of hope for Mideast peace seem designed to tamp down reports of a prickly relationship between President Obama and Prime Minister Netanyahu.
It's my belief that ultimately it is still possible to create two states, a Jewish state of Israel and a state of Palestine, in which people are living side by side in peace and security.
I'm Stephen Vanunu, and you're watching Israeli News Live. You see there, even in the photos here, you're seeing how what they're doing is they're going to take and internationalize Jerusalem. On Highway 1 that comes up from Tel Aviv, they're putting these giant arches up on the highway there, and you see the harness wires coming out where there'll be another guard checkpoint. The tunnels, they're not under a mountain. The mountains are off to each side, but yet they're making a checkpoint. Now, for those of you that have never been to Israel, you may not quite understand why this is alarming to me. But the reason it's alarming is because Tel Aviv to Jerusalem has always been Israel. I mean, 1948, no, but since 1967, when Israel recaptured back the land that God had given Israel, that became Israel. And so there was no need for a checkpoint. So if they're putting a checkpoint in, it's not coming from the West Bank, obviously the Jews that are living in Tel Aviv are going to have to go through a checkpoint, which clearly shows that either they're going to give Jerusalem to the Palestinians, or it's going to become an international city under Palestinian control, which clearly in Micah chapter 4, down there near around verse 10 or so, it says that they will be taken out of the city and will dwell in the fields. So it is a biblical prophecy that the Jews will be uprooted from Jerusalem. A prophetic segment of the news, a news broadcast that we feel that is very important in light of Prime Minister Netanyahu winning the election. His day before speech against the two-state solution, and his recanting of it from political pressure the following day after the threats from the United States. And I want to bring to some very serious situations that are already on the table. Since the Prime Minister did his recant, he said there would be no two-state in his administration. And immediately Barack Obama threatened him. His administration said clearly that we will not interfere if the Palestinians decide to take it to the Security Council. We will not veto it, which would really bring about a serious ramification against Israel. The European Union is planning sanctions on Israel for polarizing Jerusalem. This is immediately after the election. A new European Union report says that Jerusalem is at a boiling point and recommends sanctions against Israel for the polarization in the capital. The report obtained by British Guardian on Friday says that Jerusalem has reached a dangerous boiling point of polarization and violence not seen since the end of the Second Intifada in 2005. So they definitely embrace an intifada.
A senior Palestinian official said Monday that the Palestinian Authority has mustered the support of 7 of 9 UN Security Council members needed to bring to a vote its resolution that would force an Israeli withdrawal to the pre-1967 lines by November of 2016. Speaking in an interview with a Bethlehem-based Ma'an news agency, Sha'ath said, "We are at the stage of lobbying within the Security Council to get 9 more votes." Sha'ath said that the PA was facing opposition to the move from the U.S., who was not only threatened to veto the resolution should it be brought to a vote, but also was urging other Security Council members to oppose the resolution and push back a vote on the measure until the U.S. midterm elections in November. Abbas announced on October 1st that he had submitted the draft resolution to the Security Council. "We have submitted a draft resolution to the Security Council, who started consultations a few days ago and will continue for 3 weeks, perhaps longer, until we receive an answer," Abbas told a PLO meeting in Ramallah. The resolution calls for the full withdrawal of Israel from all of the Palestinian territory occupied since 1967, including East Jerusalem, a rapidly impossible and to be full completed within a specific time frame not to exceed November 2016. U.S. Ambassador to the UN Samantha Power told reporters early this month, "We are aware of President Abbas's plan, and we continue to strongly believe, that the only way to negotiate solution is through negotiations between the two parties." The PA had said that should the resolution fail to pass in the Security Council, they would seek to join the International Criminal Court at The Hague and pursue war crimes charged against Israel.
A draft resolution on raising the Palestinian flag at the United Nations is set to be adopted next week. The measure is expected to garner a majority of votes in the 193-nation forum. Palestinian envoy to the UN, Riyad Mansour, says they have the votes and they are working to gather more. He says the act would give Palestinians the hope that the international community supports them to have their own state. Once the resolution is adopted, the UN will have 20 days to act accordingly. That's when Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas will be visiting New York.
Vote has been requested. We shall now begin the voting process. Those in favor of draft resolution A/69/L87 revision/1, please signify. Those against? Abstentions.
Will all delegations kindly confirm that their votes are accurately reflected on the screen?
In favor, 119. Against 8, abstentions 45. Draft Resolution A/69/L87/revision 1 is adopted.
Let no one in this hall or around the world be fooled by the outcome of today's vote. The Assembly would vote to declare that the earth is flat if the Palestinians propose it.
Today's vote is a reaffirmation of the legitimacy of the national aspirations of the Palestinian people, of their existence among the nations of the world, and their right to self-determination.
Today, after 2 years of negotiations, the United States, together with our international partners, has achieved something that decades of animosity has not. A comprehensive long-term deal with Iran that will prevent it from obtaining a nuclear weapon.
Breaking tonight, ugly new fallout in the showdown between the White House and the Israeli Prime Minister, and the stakes are very high. Welcome to the Kelly File, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. Today, it got personal and it got angry. Israeli media reports say White House officials unloaded on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu after he accepted an invitation from Congress to speak about the threat from Iran, a move made without anyone consulting the administration. The story in the Haaretz newspaper quoted one senior White House official as saying Netanyahu, quote, spat in our face publicly, and that's no way to behave, adding that, quote, there will be a price.
Now today at 5 o'clock, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will be landing in the United States. And on Tuesday, he will be speaking before the joint houses of Congress. Joint. Over the strong objection of many people insulting the President of the United States. Who is the President? What's his name? He's the President? Here's a man coming in your house. You the head of the house. And somebody in the house invite you into the house and you sneak in the back door and don't even greet the head of the house.
I know,
and
particularly
ask
this week,
his permission.
that for many in this hall, there's one issue that stands as a test for these principles, and a test for American foreign policy. That is the conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians. 1 year ago, I stood at this podium and I called for an independent Palestine. I believed then, and I believe now, that the Palestinian people deserve a state of their own. But what I also said is that a genuine peace can only be realized between the Israelis and the Palestinians themselves. 1 year later, despite extensive efforts by America and others, the parties have not bridged their differences.
Secretary Kerry, the administration has publicly stated that you expect this deal is going to be rejected by majorities in both houses of Congress. You said that while winning approval of Congress would be nice, your goal is basically to convince enough Democrats to support the deal so that you can avoid an override of the president's veto. So as far as the administration is concerned, this is a done deal. But I do think it's important for the world, and especially for Iran, to understand that as far as the American sanctions are concerned, this is a deal whose survival is not guaranteed beyond the term of the current president. BMs that know only one purpose, and that is for nuclear warfare. And so all these promises they're making about never pursuing a weapon, they are all revealed as lies. when they are developing a long-range rocket capable of reaching this very room one day, not so far off in the future. There's only one reason to develop those rockets. That's to put a nuclear warhead on them. By the way, the deal also allows the arms embargo to eventually end. On terrorism, this deal provides billions, possibly hundreds of billions, to a regime that, according to the Director of National Intelligence, directly threatens the interests of the United States and our allies. And lastly, nothing in the deal holds Iran to account on human rights. Quite the opposite. The Iranian regime is being rewarded for its atrocious human rights record. I know that you said that you've brought up the American hostages in every negotiation, and I think we all thank you for that. But for the families of Americans who are missing or detained in Iran, such as that of my constituent Robert Levinson, this deal has brought no new information regarding their loved ones' whereabouts. This deal does nothing for Washington Post reporter Jason Rezaian, whose brother Ali is with us here in this room today. In fact, you personally met and negotiated with an Iranian official who, when pressed on Jason's case, lied to the world. He lied to the world by saying, "We don't jail people for their opinions." This deal does nothing for Marine Corps Sergeant Amir Hekmati, who dictated a letter from Evin prison that said, quote, "Secretary Kerry sits politely with the Iranians, shaking hands and offering large economic concessions to save them from economic meltdown," unquote, as Iran adds hostages. Does nothing for Pastor Saeed Abedini, whose only crime was practicing his religion. In fact, the only people this deal does anything for directly are the Iranian officials who want to continue to jail and execute their people, who hate Israel and seek to wipe the Jewish state and its people from the face of the planet, who want to spread mayhem throughout the Middle East and continue to help Assad. There's a section titled Nuclear Security, and the document states that those who negotiated the deal are prepared to cooperate with Iran on the implementation of nuclear security guidelines and best practices. There's a provision, 10.2, it reads, "Cooperation through training and workshops to strengthen Iran's ability to protect against and respond to nuclear security threats, including sabotage, as well as to enable effective and sustainable nuclear security and physical protection systems." Here's my question. If Israel decides it doesn't like this deal and it wants to sabotage an Iranian nuclear program or facility, does this deal that we have just signed obligate us to help Iran defend itself against Israeli sabotage, or for that matter, the sabotage of any other country in the world?
I believe that refers to things like physical security and safeguards. I think all of our options and those of our allies and friends would remain in place.
Well, I guess that's my point. If Israel conducts an airstrike against a physical facility, does this deal, the way I read it, does it require us to help Iran protect and respond to that threat?
No.
It does not.
The purpose of that is to be able to have longer-term guarantees as we enter a world in which cyber warfare is increasingly a concern for everybody, that if you are going to have nuclear capacities, you clearly want to be able to make sure that those are adequately protected. But I can assure you, we will coordinate in every possible way with Israel with respect to Israel's concerns.
So if Israel conducts a cyber attack against the Iranian nuclear program, are we obligated to help them defend themselves against the Israeli cyber attack?
I assure you that we will be coordinating very, very closely with Israel as we do on every aspect of Israel's security. And
well, that's not how I read this.
Well, I don't see any way possible that we will be in conflict with Israel with respect to what we might want to do there. And I think we just have to wait until we get to that point.
President Obama has secured enough U.S. Senate votes to get his Iran nuclear deal. Maryland Democrat Barbara Mikulski announced she will support the agreement, giving President Obama 34 protected votes to keep the deal in Congress. The GOP can no longer override the deal. Mikulski saying while giving her support, the agreement was, quote, the best option available to block Iran from having a nuclear bomb. The proposed Iran deal would ease economic sanctions on Iran in exchange for curbs on the country's nuclear weapons program. The president has lobbied hard for support from the Democratic Party. If President Obama can gather 41 Senate votes, they could block the Senate from voting on the agreement overall, sparing the president from having to veto the rule. Secretary of State John Kerry told CNN the administration will try and push past 34 votes until the last moment. He also added if the U.S. rejects the deal, it would, quote, confirm the fears of Iran's leaders that you can't deal with the West, that you can't trust the West. 2 Senate Democrats are joining the opposing Republican side, while 10 are still undecided. U.S. lawmakers will have until September 17th to vote on their decision.
در مورد مسائل گوناگون جهانی و منطقه‌ای مذاکره‌ای نداریم.
Iranians chanted death to America and death to Israel while burning the U.S. and Israeli flags after weekly prayers in Tehran, in sharp contrast to new Iranian President Hassan Rouhani's outreach to the West and promises of moderation and easing of tensions with the outside world. During the prayers, the master of ceremonies also led the congregation in hateful chants. President Rouhani has been trying to convince the world that he is a diplomatic, moderate leader looking for a quick way to end sanctions on Iran over its controversial nuclear program. Israel remains unconvinced by Rouhani's charm offensive, and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that Israel would unilaterally strike Iran to prevent the Islamic Republic from developing.
Israel National News is reporting an article today about a decision by the United States Supreme Court that is agreeing with President Barack Obama about Jerusalem not being part of Israel. That is a major news that is coming out. I want to share this article with you. We have been reporting now for some time that they are internationalizing Jerusalem. Jerusalem is not going to be part of Israel. I have showed you, and again, right here, you can see for yourself pictures of a border crossing being made on Highway 1 coming up through the mountains there, up from Tel Aviv Ben Gurion Airport up into Jerusalem.
And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming, and of the end of the world? And Jesus answered and said unto them, Take heed that no man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And ye shall hear of wars, and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines, and pestilences, and earthquakes in divers places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. And many false prophets shall rise, and shall deceive many. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations. And then shall the end come. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains.
Chapter 3. This know also, that in the last days perilous times shall come. For men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God, having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. From such turn away, for of this sort are they which creep into houses, and lead captive silly women laden with sins, led away with divers lusts, ever learning and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth.
hides behind closed doors. And the worst thing is that this situation, unfortunately, is growing worse day by day. Our communities of faith are being called to action, and without exception, we reject any form of
Barack Obama just issued another executive order, one of which many are calling Orwellian, because he's now giving these federal agencies the power to hire psychologists to experiment and find ways to better manipulate the American people to give in to the federal government's will. Now, they're going to say it's to better serve the American people at a cheaper cost. All the things they always say. But what this shows here is that they're digging deep into trying to get into the mind of the people and to figure you out through and through. And they're giving examples here, saying that research finding from fields such as behavioral economics and psychology about how people make decisions and act on them can be used to design government policies, and that those policies will better serve the American people. And he pushed this through. He did this yesterday, whitehouse.gov. But you can trace the origin of this back to 2013 in a policy proposal that was entertained by the White House called Strengthening Federal Capacity for Behavioral Insights. And it shows that, he's came out trying to go this route before, quietly, but now out of nowhere he just signs the executive order. And what's anyone going to do about it at this point? This guy can pretty much sign anything at this point. I don't think anyone's going to do anything about it. We've been screaming this since the NDAA. You see, he's getting ready to leave office, right? Or is he? What's going to happen here within this next year is going to be very interesting. But I'm going to leave several links here so you guys can read into some of the detail in this executive order and what they're planning to do. And if you don't look into it, people are just never going to know. They're never going to know half of the executive orders that this man's signing into law, doing it quietly. It's been Dabu 7. Peace.
Finally, after more than a decade of on-off negotiations, agreement has now been reached between the major world powers and Iran on curbing its nuclear program.
Well, the big news of the day, the UN Security Council has now approved a resolution on implementing last week's nuclear deal with Iran.
We have stopped the spread of nuclear weapons in this region. Because of this deal, the international community will be able to verify that the Islamic Republic of Iran will not develop a nuclear
twice
weapon.
On that. Look, Iran has been violating its commitment under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty not to seek nuclear weapons for almost 35 years. So today it's agreed to commit not to seek nuclear weapons under this agreement. There's no evidence whatever that Iran has made a strategic decision to give up that long quest for deliverable nuclear weapons. That's a critical fallacy underlying the entire Obama administration position.
What was our alternative? To have no deal at all and have the sanctions continue to cripple them? Is that what the
sanctions were not crippling them?
So what would you have done?
Well, I think the course we've been on really for 20 years now has led to the point where the most likely outcome, deal or no deal, is Iran gets nuclear weapons. The unpleasant reality is the only way to stop Iran from getting nuclear weapons is if somebody's prepared to use military force.
Would you expect that Israel would take some military action, or is Israel going to just sit back and be unhappy with this and watch it unfold whichever way it unfolds?
I think they should have taken action 5 years ago.
But what do they do now?
Well, they should act today before it gets worse.
By not dismantling Iran's nuclear program, in a decade this deal will give an unreformed, unrepentant, and far richer terrorist regime the capacity to produce many nuclear bombs. What a stunning, historic mistake. And Israel is not bound by this deal with Iran because Iran continues to seek our destruction. We will always defend ourselves.
Keep not thou silence, O God. Hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, Come, and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee.
So if these are the facts, and they are, where should a red line be drawn? A red line should be drawn right here. What a stunning, historic mistake.
These are times we're living in, people, that are right out of the Holy Bible. When Israel has to strike Iran's nuclear facilities, it'll cause Iran to fulfill Ezekiel 38:39, to lead a world army against Israel.
Nuclear deal, and former Congresswoman Michelle Bachman is among them, and she seems a little conflicted though, because she says the Iran nuclear deal that Obama is working on will lead to the second coming of Christ.
We need to realize how close this clock is to getting toward the midnight hour. And I think that's why, for our sake, for the sake of our family, for our nation, for the next generations, we need to cry out to a holy God. This is coming faster than anyone can see. I know I worked very hard on the Intelligence Committee to try and keep up with what was happening in the world. It got to such a crescendo, I could hardly keep up with it anymore. The events have picked up such a pace and are going to continue. It's just like the Bible forewarned, that in the last days it will be like the beginning of birth pangs. In my opinion, we are far beyond the beginning of birth pangs. We're moving far down into the process. For women who are listening to this show today, you know what I'm talking about, what it's like to deliver a baby at the very beginning stage and then at the very end before the baby is born. All I can tell you as a mom who has given birth to 5 babies, the birth pangs are very close together. They're very intense now, and we are literally watching month by month the speed move up to a level we've never seen before with these events. Barack Obama is intent. It is his #1 goal to ensure that Iran has a nuclear weapon. Why? Why would you put the nuclear weapon in the hands of madmen who are Islamic radicals who believe it's their religious duty to bomb Israel and to bomb the United States? That is where we're headed right now. And that's why the best thing that we can do is have churches and pastors explain our times. Believers need to get our lives right with God. And then we intercede and intercede, and then not despair, but rejoice that we get to be living in the most exciting time in history. Prophets said we look to the future. We long to see those days and live in those days. Why? Because it's the return of a soon and coming King. Jesus Christ is coming back. We, in our lifetimes, potentially could see Jesus Christ returning to earth, the rapture of the church. This is one of the most exciting times in history. We need to be exactly watching the tenor of the times, be observing, and look up. Our redemption draweth nigh. These are wonderful times, but we see the destruction, but this is the destruction that was foretold.
Very good.
I want to say here in 10 Downing Street, reaffirm again that I am ready to resume direct negotiations with the Palestinians with no conditions whatsoever to enter negotiations, and I'm willing to do so immediately.
There's a lot to talk about today. There's the close relationship between Britain and Israel. There's the growing economic and commercial ties between our countries. There's also some enormously important global threats to discuss, particularly the threat of Islamist extremism, most notably from ISIL in Syria and Iraq. So we'll be discussing all those things. Britain remains staunch in our defence of Israel's right to exist and right to defend itself. We also remain thoroughly committed to the two-state solution and the peace process, which we'll also discuss today.
Shalom, covering I'm Stephen Vanunu. You're watching Israeli News Live. We're following some stories here on the internet here that I'm trying to find out if there's some real validity to these stories. And some of you guys may already be aware of those stories. One of those stories in particular that's brought a little bit of concern for me here is recently there was a clipping sent to me, a news clipping there that Pope Francis is speaking about in the coming days and weeks for people to be careful that there is going to be fire that'll be falling out of heaven. Kind of seems to suggest that maybe the meteorite, maybe some validity to that story after all. And another one that's really concerned me quite a bit is that now I've got another news article that was sent to me today that states that NASA is talking about 15 days of darkness in December. Of course, they're saying that this is something to do with the cooling of the sun. However, I don't believe that. If there is really truth to this particular situation, I think that what's really going to happen is that it's going to be the mysterious planet, so many people call Planet X, may actually get in the way of the sun as it's coming closer to the Earth. According to what some scientists are saying, that it'll actually be here in the month of March next year. Now, I say that because just yesterday we had a double eclipse, an event that just does not happen anywhere in the world or ever has in any of the recent history. I'm Stephen Vanunu. As soon as we can get some of these stories corroborated to find out if there's some really truth to them, we will get that information to you as rapidly as we can.
This video was not to make anyone be in fear. If you're in fear, that is not the Spirit of God. This is the time when we should be celebrating. Jesus himself said, "Look up, for your redemption draw near." We've been in this world a long time. They've been saying it for a long time. I made this video to show that all these things are happening at once. So it is not like the past. We don't have the technology to do the things that we have now that will fulfill prophecy. Jesus said these things would happen at once. We must pay attention. This is it. You will see the coming of Christ in our lifetime. It will happen. We need to pay attention. Look into these covenants and see if they are 7 years. Right now, the details are being held very close to their chest. But they must come out. Satan must reveal himself to the prophets and to the people of God. We will find out. And in the meantime, stay prayed up. Get your house together. Get your lives together. Teach someone. help someone other than yourself. It's time to get right. It's time to stop playing with sin. It's time to stop playing patty cake with the devil. So